Today, I'm really excited to be here with Dr. Carrie Mitchell, who is so graciously offered her time to talk to us about nutrition and overall health and the importance it plays in building our businesses and sustainable businesses. And as you know, this is a big important piece for me. And so I'm very excited. Thank you so much for joining us today to give us your wisdom and insights. Dr. Carrie has a degree in biochemistry and also naturopathic medicine. You have been a volunteer in programs for health promotion and prenatal. Do you have, is there a special degree for prenatal and pediatric?
It's more of a special interest. So
okay.
We do extra courses on the side, and it's where I kind of focus my practice in pretty much all things women's health.
Yes,
Yeah.
all things women's health. And you have two clinics, right? So there's the Grassroots Naturopathic Clinic, which is here in Calgary.
Yeah.
And then you are also working out of a clinic that focuses mostly on reproduction. Is that
Right?
right?
I'm working with the midwife group in Cochrane, Alberta, and I focus on fertility, prenatal, postnatal, and pediatrics. So lots of mums and babies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's not why I went to see Dr. Carrie.
My Calgary clinic's a lot more generalized.
Yes,
so I
it
see
is.
a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of women's health, a lot of hormone health, a lot of weight loss, detox, nutrition.
In fact, the way I ended up hearing about you was through my really good friend Sarah.
Yeah.
Who ended up seeking out someone to help her overcome this annual chronic cold or flu that she was having.
Her immune system.
Her immune system, exactly.
And,
Sarah spoke so highly of Dr. Carrie that I decided to seek her out as well. And that was probably 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
And Dr. Carrie has been a huge part of my health and a huge part of my community. As you know, I'm very strong on building the right people around you as support group. And Dr. Carrie is definitely one of those people for me. So every 6 weeks or so, I go and see her, and she attunes me.
Well, you're great because you take a lot of the concepts that we're talking about, and you really try and apply them. And, we all need this good network for self-care, well, whether it's physical, emotional,
Absolutely.
Spiritual, to keep us on track, because human nature kind of likes to pull us off track depending on, different obstacles in our lives. And I find that, that regular check-in and making sure that you're on track and feeling accountable to yourself and to others sometimes is
hugely important.
Is huge.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you do a really great job of it because you offer me that quick check-in. We talk about what's going on. And the funny thing to me is, now that I think about it, you're right. Life gets busy. We get into our autopilot and do. And before you know it, 6 weeks is up and I'm getting the reminder that I'm going to see you. And on the way to your office, I'm thinking about, so what have I been doing that we talked about the last time, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me that this is exactly why I need this, is to have that check-in and to just have that pattern interrupt, I think, is what it is for me.
And what's interesting, I know you talk about goal setting a lot, is goal setting is most effective when we have kind of regular check-ins and accountability. So sometimes I think that, When people tell me if they're doing a weight loss program or if they're, tracking their cycles or hormones, when they see that on their calendar, it's like they try and be really good for the next week because they're always like, oh, I know I was coming in, so I had to have some good things to say, right? So it keeps us accountable, right?
It definitely does. So let's talk a little bit about the sustainability of being a mom or a business owner, a woman in general.
Yeah.
And why is this so tough for us to, to take that care for ourselves? Like we tend to always make sure everyone else is okay in our lives.
Absolutely.
And we put ourselves second, third, or even fourth or fifth, right?
Yeah.
Depending.
And that's one of the things I work on with a lot of women, is that for some reason we don't put ourselves first or even on the priority list. And one thing that we've talked about before, and I talk about with lots of patients, is what are your top 3 priorities? And then we say, well, where are the top 3 places you spend your time? Mm-hmm. And in the top 3 is always their health, their family, and maybe their friendships. And we find that when we look at where they're putting their time into whether it's like social media or working really long hours, caring about what other people think. Absolutely, there's taking care of others, which is that family piece. But usually when we're talking about where we spend our time, your personal health isn't actually on that priority list. So there's an incongruency between what your priorities are and where you allocate your time and efforts. Yeah. And that's a really eye-opening conversation for some women, is to say, well, my health is hugely important. So why am I not prioritizing it? Yes. And one thing we talk about is self-worth. So sometimes we feel as though we aren't worth it. I don't know if that's like subconsciously or actively, but there needs to be a little bit of a paradigm shift, and it's not selfish. It's essential. It is essential. Yeah. And this is a big piece of what I spend a lot of my time talking about, and also do a lot of my own research in, because of my own quest for freedom and for happiness, and just wanting to understand why it is so much harder for women than it is for men. And my research has been bringing me to Mama Gina, or also known as Regina Thomas Hauer. Yeah. And she has done so much work with the Academy of Womenly Arts. And what she's found through 30 years of doing this is that it really stems from our societal culture and how we've been raised. So from very small on, we are subliminal messages. Yeah. That we don't even question anymore, because they're so part of our DNA now that we as women are just not to question what we want, what our pleasure centers are, what our joy is in our life. And that is, she actually says that is why the earth is slowly dying, because we're literally not putting enough pleasure out there. Yeah. So it has become a bit of a personal quest for me to not only adapt it myself, but to teach other women the same thing, that you come first. It's not selfish. Yeah. It's not about, in fact, it is actually selfish, but it's necessary. It's a necessary selfish, because if you're not okay, no one else is going to be okay. Yeah. And I talk about that a lot with families, is if the matriarch crumbles, the whole family crumbles. That's right. And that's the same with business owners and entrepreneurs. Yes. If your health crumbles, then you're the business. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So, you're the heartbeat of your business. Yeah. Absolutely. So if you crumble, the whole business will crumble. So it's essential. It really is. So one of the things that really stood out to me when we first met was something you showed me, and I think this leads really well into what you just said. What are you willing to do? How much time are you willing to make? Like shining that light on the obvious, that yes, it is in the back of our heads to be healthy and vital,
and fit and all of this,
Yeah.
but how much are we willing to put into it? When you illustrated that to me on terms of our illusion around weight loss,
Yeah.
and what we want to look like, versus what are we willing to do. So to put this as an example on me, I was going to see Dr. Carrie to find out how I can lose more weight for my wedding. And I had this image in my head of like these beautiful arms and this like really lean body shape. And you basically looked at me and you said, okay, let me show you something. And she showed me, it's called The Cost of Being Lean, right?
Yes, yeah.
You can look it up online. It's called The Cost of Being Lean. And you can see the body shapes and what the person that has these specific body shapes actually does on a day-to-day, weekly basis in order to look that way, to attain that. And for some reason, that just really like clicked, because here I was going to work out maybe twice, 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And that's for 45 minutes. And I wanted to look like someone who works out, 7 days a week for 2 hours at a time.
Yeah.
So it was just getting clear on, are you actually making time for your health? Are you prioritizing it, or are you just in your head wishing this was
Yeah, and
true?
I mean, I talk about that with a lot of women because I think that, whether it's media or society wants us to look a really specific way, and that's not always aligned with health. It's not always aligned with our genetics and where we prioritize our time and our happiness.
Yeah.
So that's a really, like, the cost of being lean is a little bit of a wake-up call again to say, well, I don't really want to be in the gym for 2 hours, 6 days a week, not having a glass of wine ever, not enjoying birthday cake once every couple of months.
Right.
Like, you have to be really strict to get these Hollywood bodies. And I don't think that's in line with health. And so I think it's a little bit of a nice visual to say, okay, what are our goals? What are the basis of those? Is it what is actually best for me, or is it what I think I want to look great in a picture or to look great in a bathing suit, right?
That the truth?
And is that in line with health? I know a lot of people who train really hard who, are super stressed, or they lose their menstruation because they're too lean, and it's not in line with health. And so, for the short term, if you want to obtain a certain goal or a certain aesthetic, that's fine. But I think that there's a lot of confusion with that being in line with our general health and vibrancy.
Yeah, and you've definitely done a really great job in educating me on that. So let's talk a little bit about education, because I know that's a big part of what you do is you approach your practice from an educational point of view. You don't just subscribe, to the latest, greatest fad. Yeah. So do you have like some really good tips for us on what we can do? Because I know you also like keeping it simple, which I appreciate so much. So do you have some tips for us that we could kind of narrow it down to on what we should do or could do on a daily basis to just enrich our life in terms of making our health a priority, being vital? Yeah.
So the first one is maybe changing our definition of diet to habitual nourishment. Mm-hmm. So if we say, I habitually nourish myself. So every time you eat is a chance to nourish your body, whether that's physical, giving you the vitamins and minerals and proteins and fats and carbs, or whether that's social or emotional or psychological, right? It doesn't always have to be superfood smoothies and juicing and, free range eggs and all of this great stuff that is for your body.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is a glass of wine with girlfriends. Sometimes it is, taking your kids or your niece and nephew out for ice cream, right? That can be a part of it. But when we're eating something, we're saying, is this nourishing me or is this depleting me?
Yeah.
And I find that when we kind of take a step back, not jumping on the fad diets or, the weight loss goals or counting calories, and just be like, is this nourishing something in me or is this fulfilling something else? So in my practice, I see a lot of emotional eating. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a situation where you feel like you need to fill something up in you, whether it's a glass of wine at night, whether it's going to the pantry for something sweet or salty. And usually I find that that's not hunger, that's not nourishment. It's fulfilling something mental, emotional.
Yeah.
And in that case, starting to dissect that and be really honest with yourself, I think is the first step to saying, okay, what is this feeding?
Yes.
And so usually one of the biggest things for me is thinking about nourishment in your life.
Yeah.
So,
well, because nourishment can mean so many different things, right? Like,
Yeah.
so many, and then it's all inclusive. Just the word itself is all inclusive for me.
Yeah.
It's just nourishing.
nourishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
So that's a big one.
That's a huge one.
Yeah.
Because and just as a comment on a side, what I've learned throughout my journey on especially the diet stuff is that whenever I deprive myself of something,
Yeah.
it usually backfires and it comes back like 10 times worse.
So that's my next point, is following an 80-20 or a 90-10 rule.
Yeah.
We find in scientific studies that when we're overly deprived, we actually are setting ourselves up for failure.
Yeah.
But to give yourself something little or modify what your treat is or what your taboo food is, when we give ourselves a little bit every day, we're more likely to stay on track throughout. So a few of the scientific studies I always lean on is usually when we start our day off with something nourishing and we're proud of, we're more likely to eat well throughout the day. And I think you've noticed that too.
100%.
Is if your breakfast or your first meal of the day
Yeah.
is something you're proud of and nourishes you, especially from more the physical side, something with fats and proteins and whole foods, we find that you're more likely to eat better throughout the day. If you wake up and you have a Cliff Bar, you have, bacon and eggs or waffles and syrup or something that you don't really feel in line with health, you're just likely to say, well, today's a wash.
It's a write-off, yeah.
Today's a write-off, so let's go out for lunch, let's go out for dinner, and let's have a bottle of wine,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, so the 80-20 or 90-10 rule can work differently for a few people. So some people will say, I want a little something every day. That's like my treat. Sometimes it's dark chocolate. It's as easy as that. Sometimes it's like an almond milk latte with some sweetener. And then other times I'm great throughout the week. And then Saturday night, I go out for dinner and I have a glass of wine. And Sunday, I do brunch. So it can be whatever works for you.
80-20 rule. Got
Yeah.
it. I like that.
Yeah.
And do you recommend doing a lot of planning around that so that...
Well, I mean, we know that when we plan ahead, we're more likely to be successful. So meal planning is huge. Having your snacks to go. When I get over hungry,
Oh, I know.
I am an empty pit. Like I can eat a meal, I can eat a second meal, and
Yep.
I'm full, but I'm not satisfied. So
Yes.
for me, I know I need to. My kind of appetite rules my day.
Yeah.
So I'll go into patient visits 5 minutes late because I need my smoothie or I need to eat something. So if you know that about yourself, eating every couple of hours can be really helpful. And then planning. Like I have patients who will pack a cooler of food because
To go to work, yeah.
they know that if they don't pack their lunch, they're
Yep.
in the plus 15
Yeah.
and they're going out for...
And I always
Fast
admire
food.
those people that
Yeah.
that I see all prepared. They come all prepared. I've always admired them. I've never been that person to pre-plan my meals, and I
Yeah.
think a big piece of that is education again. You can also make that meal planning time and involve your whole family in this.
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
don't just feel like you as the mom or as the woman of the house needs to do all that. My husband and I, we spend now, I want to say mostly Saturdays, sometimes Sundays, where we come together and we prep some of the snacks. We prep the food. He loves to cook, actually, so I'm lucky that way.
Yeah.
But we have actually made it a habit now for us to use that as time together and do something quality time together rather
Yeah.
than just sit in front of the TV or what have you, right?
Absolutely. And it makes you feel good. It makes you feel set for the week.
Yes.
When I grew up, when we were, I would say 10, we had to make a meal. We had these like kid-friendly cookbooks and we had to pick which one we were going to do. Mom and Dad would do the grocery shopping And
Love
we
that.
knew that like Thursday night was my night, so I knew that I had to make something, and usually it had
And what
to
a
be
great
healthy.
way to learn.
Yeah,
As
absolutely.
a child, and it's become something that is ingrained in you now,
Yeah,
right?
and it's easy now.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I just don't eat out. It's
Yeah.
not really something I do. I love going for a nice meal, but
Yeah.
I'd way rather sit at a restaurant, order an appetizer, have a nice meal versus, grab fast food on the way home.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally do.
Yeah.
Because, and let's just speak on that for a second, because I think this is something that is so, so important. What we put into our bodies will make a difference. So I agree with the 80-20 rule. And 80% of it needs to not just be nourishing, but it needs to be sustainable. So, grabbing fast food or eating, quick bars, whatever it is that we gravitate to, and we all do it, but it's just not sustainable. So I notice it, for example, when I break out, I noticed I've had either too much dairy, or I've had not maybe too much dairy, but too much non-organic dairy, where there's a lot of hormones in the products. So what my point is that pay attention to what goes in, because it will affect your brain activity. It will affect your entire system.
Digestive tract, inflammation in the body.
Inflammation, 100%. So do you have any tips for that on us?
For inflammation? Mm-hmm. Well, what we generally prescribe is an anti-inflammatory diet. So what that is a whole foods diet, eating lots of vegetables and fruits. That's very alkalinizing in your diet. Eating lean meats, so chicken, turkey, fish, salmon, limited red meat, absolutely. Reducing sugars. Sugars are extremely inflammatory in the diet.
Yeah.
Refined sugars, things like honey and maple syrup and agave nectar can be totally fine. Alcohol, caffeine. The big ones I see are dairy, gluten, caffeine, alcohol, and sugars being more acidic and inflammatory. So, like we said, 80-20, but keeping your diet, I usually say a few things. So whole foods, looking at your food and being able to discern what the ingredients are. Colorful, so keeping color.
Yeah.
With kids, I use the stoplight analogy. So every day eating something red, yellow, and green.
Oh, cool.
And that's pretty easy.
Yes.
And they'll come in and they're like, ooh, I've been eating so much red. And it's fun. It's really fun. Yeah. And we can do that too.
Yeah.
Lots of, and yellow and orange kind of go together.
Yeah.
So colorful, whole foods, plant-based, and organic when possible. So just really trying to discern some pride from your diet, I think, is important. And drinking the Kool-Aid, kind of finding out your why and then just subscribing to it. So we've talked a lot in the past about this being not a fad diet, but a lifestyle change, like changes that you guys can make to improve your health and your wellness and your family happiness by centralizing that really healthy diet. And what we've done in the past is small and cumulative changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you speak to that?
So what I challenge some people to do is find one thing a week in your diet that you don't like. So I used to do a ton of like protein bars on the run. Like we sell them at our clinic. They're from a supplement company and they're still crap.
Yeah.
But when I am between patients and busy and I forgot my lunch or I don't have time to heat it up and eat, which I need to work on, absolutely, I'll just grab a bar.
Yep.
And I didn't like that. So what I started doing was making my own nut balls.
Cool.
And so I have one recipe that I make every week. And I just have them and they're my mid-afternoon snack. And I feel good about it.
Yeah.
Another thing was hummuses, and that's not the worst thing. But I was like, I should make my own hummus. Let's try it.
Yes.
And I love my hummus. My mom makes the same hummus. And it's kind of fun when you're talking like to your parents or to some people who grew up with like a certain meat and potato diet.
Yes.
Is to see them evolve. And she still texts me. She's like, look what I made for lunch. I'm
Yes.
like, ooh, good for you.
So good.
So yeah, having like a salad you make every week, a really good, turkey chilies, just having some of your staples that are healthier than what you used to do. And so you kind of build on that. And then I see patients that I'm like, so tell me about the diet. They're like, yeah, remember we did that detox and I kept this in from that detox 2 years ago. Remember when I did that, strength building couple of months, I kept that protein shake in that I put spirulina and leafy greens and my fish oils, and I make this really good smoothie I drink every day for breakfast.
Yes.
And I love it. I'm not bored of it. Because like I said, when you find something you like, keep it in the diet and keep it like in your grocery cart.
Yes.
And so I
it
think
makes it simpler too. It's more
Yeah.
time efficient that way, because I find a big piece of meal preparing or cooking at home for me is like, what are we gonna make?
Yeah.
So having having a list of recipes that we all enjoy is really important and helpful, because it helps with the grocery list. I know exactly what I need to get every week. You know, it's not sitting down on Sunday and like figuring out,
oh, I need this random spice, right?
Exactly. It's all about efficiency, as well. But I love the idea of just, because a lot of us get so overwhelmed by it all. We want to do it all, and we want to change it, and we want to immediately have the results.
Yeah.
But it does take time, and so just changing one thing at a time. So you said one thing at a time for a week.
Yeah, and do that for 8 weeks, and you have 8 massive changes.
Wow.
Right? Just one thing a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For all you know, that could be a meal for every day of the week.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Really,
small
really cool.
changes that are cumulative creates habits. And that's when we're more successful, is
Yes.
when we have these habits that we incorporate into our lifestyle. So I have patients I put on detoxes and on weight loss programs, and that's all well and good, and they'll lose the weight or they'll feel great. But it's about sustainability, and that's what we've been talking about, is after we lose that zest of willpower and that influx of effort, is that going to be maintainable, right? And so that's kind of what we need to build, is building your habitual nutrition and nourishment throughout the day.
Yeah. And showering yourself with a lot of tender kindness and self-love in along the process, because it took 40 years. I can't believe 40 years to get to this. It's not going to be undone in just a week, or maybe 30 days or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
I always say, like, it took me 10 years to get my diet to where it is today, and I hope it's even better in 10 years.
Yes.
And it's kind of about finding out where your weaknesses are, improving them, and knowing that if you make 1 week without changes, your intention's still there. So if you fall off, just get back on the next day. You're not gonna ruin the accumulation of all your great efforts with one buffet out, or
one glass of wine.
one glass of wine, right? Like, just get back on track.
Yes.
Yeah, it's always a new day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your intention means a lot. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, keep it simple. Keep it simple. Back to basis. Really just focus on a whole foods diet that's colorful, that you feel nourished on, and know that you're worth it. You know, you're worth feeding yourself and nourishing yourself, I think, is really important.
It is. Prioritizing yourself, I think, is going to be the why that gets you through the tougher times.
That's the thing, right? When the why is looking good in a bikini, or losing 10 pounds before a wedding, or, fitting into a dress, that's a very short-term why. So I feel like the most effective patients I have and people I know are the ones that they're clear on their why. They keep themselves accountable to themselves and to others, and they really check in with themselves, and they make sure that they're doing it for the right reasons, and they're looking at the root cause. So that we work a lot with root cause as naturopathic doctors. What I find is some people come in and they need these little tips, and we'll do a great detox, and we'll do like more of a specific weight loss plan, and they're super successful. Other people need to work on the root cause, which can be emotional eating, self-worth, self-esteem, and and sometimes negative relationships with food. And in that case, often talking to a psychologist and doing some inner self-work is the foundation of your success. Absolutely.
But it is a big picture approach, and I think that is one of the biggest reasons that I'm such a big fan of your work, because I've always felt that you were legitimately and sincerely more interested in the root of all things rather than the like patching it up. Like you have patch solutions too, and I have taken advantage of some of them. But for me to come for my annual vitamin shot, is a patch solution. We need to figure out how how we can work together so that I don't need to do that per se. So one last question I have for you, and this is more out of my own interest, because I struggle drinking a lot of water.
Water's big.
So why is water so important? And do you have any tips on what we could do? I suspect you're going to say slow and steady, but what we can do to increase our water intake. Do you have any tricks up your sleeve?
Yeah, so water, we know that our body is primarily made up of water. So all of our cells in our brain and our body and our organs and our muscles tissue is primarily made up of water. So what it does is it helps us function optimally. It is the main detoxifier. So what our liver and our kidneys does is it puts toxins into the water, and then we excrete them. So it's really important to excrete all of our toxins from our body. One of the tricks that you can do is set a reminder. So we get really zoned in. We get working, we chase after kids, and what we need is some sort of tangible reminder. So that can be different for everyone. In the technological ages, there are apps. There are apps where you can schedule yourself in if that's your sort of motivator. So having like a little fitness tracker. People are like, oh, I'm going to get my 10,000 steps today, right? And I'm going to drink my water because I can put it in an app and it makes me feel good. Other are just on your iPhone, the simple reminders is just give me a reminder at 10, at 1, at 4, and at 7 to say, did you drink your water? So we like about 2 liters. It's not a perfect science. I say so that every time that you're going to the washroom, which should be once every 1 to 2 hours, it's clear.
Okay.
So that's an easy way to do it. And so having these reminders keeps you accountable, right? Other people like little notes. So if they know that they're going to feed the kids every 3 hours, if they're stay-at-home mums or have young kids, if it's right on the fridge as a little post-it note, drink a cup of water. And then other people, if they're working in offices all the time, I love mini meditations or mini desk breaks. We know that we're super sedentary. We know that when we're working too long, we actually lose productivity. So getting up every 2 hours, drink of water, use the washroom, get 200 steps, move your body, give yourself a stretch, right? And so that can be either layered into your day or on your app, giving you a little ting.
Walk to the water cooler, get the cup of water, and go around the block.
And it doesn't have to be every 3 hours. You can drink 750 mils in the morning, and then you can do that again in the afternoon, and you can have a cup of water at night. So it's important to kind of just keep yourself accountable, however that is.
This has been super, super, super cool. Thank you so much for sharing all of your incredible knowledge and expertise. So where can people find you if they have more questions for you?
So I work primarily out of Grassroots Naturopathic Medical Clinic, and that's where I see more of my generalized population. That's by Mount Royal University in the Southwest. You can go to grassrootsnaturopathic.com. You can also find me in Cochrane at Shifra Center for Wellness at shifracenter.com.
I'll put the links on the bottom of this as well so that they can link up with you on that. Thank you so much, Carrie. As always, the best conversations happen after the episode on YvonneWinkler.com/The Freedom Seeker Show. So go there, leave a comment and let me know what resonated most with you and why. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to our email list and become a Freedom Seeker Insider. You will get instant access to an audio I created called The 5 Steps to a Freedom Life, as well as some special content, exclusive giveaways, and some personal updates from me that don't share anywhere else except maybe texting my BF.